Bole Baba Ki Jai. So in our last discourse, we learned about Sukha Deva arriving in Mathila and being welcomed. And now he's in the palace, and King Janaka has heard that he's arrived, and we'll begin with this beautiful discourse. It's chapter 18. Sutta said, Maharishis, when the King Janaka heard of the arrival of Sukha Deva, who is the son of his guru, he took his priest before him and, attended by his ministers, came before Sukha Deva in pure spirit. Then he duly worshipped Sukha, offering padya, argya, and an excellent seat, and a cow yielding milk, and then inquired about his welfare. Sukha Deva accepted duly all the things offered by the king and informed him of his well-being, and asked the king in return of his welfare, and took a seat at ease on the asan. The king Janaka asked the son of Vedavyasa, who is full of peace. He said, O Muni, you are devoid of any attachment and you have no desires. May I inquire why such a person as your honored self has come to see me? Sukha Deva said, O great king, my father told me thus. O child, take a wife, for the householder life is the best of all the ashrams. But I thought that will be the source of my bondage to this world, and therefore did not obey my father's word, though he was my highest guru. He then again said to me, if one takes a household life, it does not at once follow that he will be held in bondage. Yet I did not agree to that. Then the Muni, thinking me still to be in some doubt, spoke this word of advice to me. O son, do not be sorry. Go to Mathila and have your doubts solved. There my disciple, the King Janaka, is governing the kingdom without any source of danger. He is a jiva mukta, liberated while living, and is free from the idea of body, etc. So everybody knows this. When the royal sage Janaka, though governing his kingdom, is not seen tied up by Maya, then, O son, why are you afraid of this samsara when you are living this forest life? Therefore, O son, trust me and marry, and in case you doubt very much, then go and see the King Janaka yourself. Ask him and remove your doubts. He will certainly solve your doubts. But, O son, after hearing the king, please come back here quickly to me. O king, when my father spoke thus, by his permission, I have come now to your capital, O king. I do not want anything save moksha, liberation. Therefore, O sinless one, kindly advise what I am to do so that I can attain this moksha. O Lord of Kings, practicing asceticism, going to the holy places of pilgrimage, holding vows, performing sacrifices, studying the Vedas, or earning wisdom, whatever is the cause of moksha, kindly say that. Hearing this, King Janaka said, O son of my guru, I am telling what ought to be done by the Brahmanis, following the path of moksha. Listen. After having the holy thread ceremony, a Brahmin should live in the house of his guru to study the Vedas, the Vedantas, and pay the dakshina, the fee, to the guru according to rules. He will then return home and marry and enter in the householder life. He should lead a life of contentment, be free from desires, sinless and truthful, and earn his livelihood with a pure heart and according to the sanction of justice and conscience. He is to perform the fire ceremonies and other sacrifices. And after getting sons and grandsons, he is to leave his wife under the care of his son, and then to take the life of vanaprastha, the third stage of life. The Brahmana, the knower of Dharma, must practice tapasya and become master of his 6 passions. And when he gets disgusted with the world, and when the dispassion will arise within him, he would enter into the 4th ashram. For the man is first to enter into the householder's life, and when he will be quite dispassionate toward the world, he will then have a right to take the ashram of sannyas, renunciation, which is the 4th ashram of life. A course contrary to this can never entitle one to the ashram of sannyas. This is the beneficial word of the Vedas, and it must hold true. It cannot be false. This is my firm belief. O Sukha, in the Vedas are mentioned 48 samskaras, consecrations, purification rites, out of which the learned Mahatmas have reserved 40 samsaras for the whole householder, and the last 8 samsaras, sama, dhamma, etc., are for the sannyas. And this good usage is heard to come down from very ancient times. A brahmana ought to complete his previous ashrama successfully and then enter into the succeeding ashram. Sukha said, if the pure dispassion arises out of the knowledge and wisdom, jnana and vijnana, already arises before taking the householder ashram, is it still necessary to pass through householder life? Or is one entitled then to take up at once the sannyasin ashram and quit everything and reside in the forest? Janaka said, O one, giving honor to the sastras and the gurus, though the powerful passions seem to be under control in the period of unripened yoga, the imperfect yogic state, yet one ought not to trust them, for it is generally seen many imperfect yogins find themselves disturbed by one or the other of the senses. If the mind of one who has already entered into sannyasa ashram gets perturbed in discourse, then how can he, you can see for yourself, satisfy desires of eating good things, sleeping nicely, seeing his son, or wishing any other desires, knowing them to lead to his degradation? He is then in a very serious state. The net of desires is very difficult to be conquered by the men that can never die out. Therefore, to put an end to them, the advice is to cut them slowly, slowly. He who sleeps on an elevated place has the danger of tumbling down, but one who sleeps in a low place has no such danger. So any man who has once taken the highest dharma of sannyas, and if he be fallen, then he never gets hold of the real track. As an ant begins to get from the root of the tree, and by gets to the topmost part of the branches, so humans, beings, go by degrees from one ashrama to the other, till they go to the highest. Then and then only they are able to get easily their desired truth. The birds, without anticipating any danger, get up to the sky very quickly, and soon they get tired and cannot go to their desired place. But the ant goes with rest to its desired place. This mind is very difficult to be controlled. For this reason, the men of unripened minds cannot conquer it all at once, and are advised to conquer it by and by, observing the laws of one ashrama after the other. See also if anybody remaining in his household life be of quiet temper and of good intellect, and if he takes success and failure in the same light, and he be not elated in times of pleasure, and not depressed in times of pain, and does his duty for duty's sake without troubling his mind with cares and anxieties, then that householder acquires pure happiness by the realization of his self and acquires moksha, liberation. There is no manner of doubt in this, O sinless one. See, I am liberated while living, though I am engaged in preserving a kingdom. If any source of pain or pleasure arises, I am not in any way affected by them, as I will attain in the end mukti, liberation from the body, though I am always wondering at my free will, enjoying various things as I like and do various things as it pleases me, so you can do your duties and then be liberated in the end. O son of my Guru, when this material world, the cause of all error, according to the Vedanta Sastras, is simply an object of sight, then how can this material substance, an object of sight, be the source of bondage of the Atman, the Self? O Brahman, though the 5 material elements can be seen, their qualities or gunas can be known only by inference. So the Self is to be inferred. It can never be an object of sight. And also this Self, known by inference, changeless and without any impurity or stain, can never be bound by the visible, changeful material things. O Brahmana, this impure heart is the source of all pleasures and pains. So when the heart becomes pure and quiet, all the things then become fully pure, O Brahmana. If going often and often to all the sacred places and the tirthas and bathings there do not make one's heart pure and holy, then all one's troubles are taken in vain. O destroyer of enemies, it is the mind that is the cause of bondage or freedom, and not the body, not the jivama, the embodied soul, nor the senses. The Self or Atman is always pure consciousness and is ever free. So truly speaking, it can never be bound. Bondage and freedom reside only in the mind. So when the mind gets peace, the bondage of samsara is also at an end. He is an enemy, he is a friend, he is neither an enemy nor a friend. All these differences, different thoughts, reside in the mind and arise out of duality. How can the idea of difference exist when everything has become all one pervading self? Jiva is Brahma. I am that Brahma and nothing else. There is nothing to be discussed here. It is owing to the dualities that oneness appears not clear and difference between Jiva and Brahma arise. This difference is due to avidya, and by which this difference vanishes, that is termed vidya. This difference between vidya and avidya ought to be always kept in view by those that are clever. How can the pleasure from the cooling effect of the shadow be felt if the heating effect of the rays of the sun be not previously experienced? So how vidya is to be experienced if avidya be not felt before? Sattva, rajas, and tamas guna reside naturally in things made of gunas, and the 5 principal elements reside naturally in substances made up of elements. So the senses reside naturally in their own forms. So how can there be any stain to the Atman, which is unattached? Yet to teach humanity, the high-souled persons preserve always with greatest care the respect of the Vedas. If they do not do this, then, O sinless one, the ignorant person would act lawlessly according to their wishes, and Dharma will become extinct. When Dharma will become extinct, the Varnashrama will gradually die out, so the well-wishers should always follow the path of the Vedas. Sukha said, "O king, I have now heard all that you have to say. Still my doubts remain. It is not solved. O king, in the Dharma of the Vedas there is himsa, acts of killing and injuring, and we hear that there is much of adharma, sin, in the above himsa. O king, in the Dharma of the Vedas, how can the Dharma of the Vedas give moksha, O king? One can see before one's eyes that the drinking of somarasa, the killing of animals, the eating of fish and flesh, and so are advised in the Vedas. So how can mukti be obtained by following the Veda Dharma? It is heard that in ancient times there was a great king named Sasabindu, very religious, truthful, and performing sacrifices, very liberal. He protected the virtues and chastised those that were wicked and going astray. He performed many yagyas, where many cows and sheep were sacrificed according to the rules of the Vedas, and abundant dakshina, sacrificial fees, were presented to everyone that performed their parts in the sacrifices. In these sacrifices, the hides of the cows that were sacrificed as victims were heaped to such an enormous extent that they looked like a mountain. Then the rains fell, and the dirty water coming out of that enormous heap of skins flowed down and gave rise to a river, which was then called the Kamandvati River. And what a wonder! That cruel king left behind him an incredible fame and went to heavens. Whatever it may be, it can never come to my head that I should perform the Veda Dharma filled with so many acts of killing and cruelty. Again, when the man finds pleasures in sexual intercourses, and when they do not have that intercourse, they experience pain. How can you expect such persons to attain liberation? King Janaka said, "The killing of animals in a sacrificial ceremony is not killing. It is known as ahimsa. For that himsa is not from any selfish attachment. Therefore, when there is no such sacrifice and the animals are killed out of selfish attachment, then that is real himsa. There is no opinion in this. Smoke arises from a fire when fuels are placed in it, and smoke is not seen when no fuel is added. So, sutta, the himsa as prescribed in the Vedas is free from all blemishes, selfish attachment, etc., and therefore it is unblameable. So it follows the himsa committed by persons attached to objects is the real himsa. That can be blamed. But the himsa of those people who have no desires is not that sort of himsa. Therefore, the learned men that know the Vedas declare that himsa done by the dispassionate person with their hearts free from egotism is no himsa done at all. O Devji, really speaking, the killing of animals done by the householder attached to senses and their objects and done under their impulses can be taken into account as the real act of killing. But O Sutta, of those whose hearts are not attached to anything of those self-controlled persons, desires of moksha, if they do an act of himsa out of a sense of duty with no desire or fruits and with their hearts free from egotism, that can never be reckoned as a real act of killing. Thus ends the 18th chapter of the first book of Janaka's giving instruction on truth to Sukha Deva in the Mahapurana, Srimad Devi Bhagavatam of 18,000 verses. Bole Baba Ki Jai, Jai Mahamaya Ki Jai.